Hey, Jeremy, what was your favorite game of SHUX?
I think my favorite game at SHUX was Bagged and Boarded by Octoraffe. Neat new little comic book collecting game coming out from them.
Okay.
What was your favorite game at SHUX?
An Age Contrived from Bellows Intent.
Here we are. It's morning.
Hi.
Good morning, Wendy.
Good morning, Jeremy.
Early morning at SHUX before they open the doors. We're one of the first booths here, apparently. But we are setting up to show off Heisenburger. We've got lots of free giveaways here. Some hot sauce. Some little burger pockets, stickers. So we're hoping we'll get a lot of people through here to test out the game today.
We've also got paper copies of Kickflip. Our free game when you sign up for our newsletter.
Mm-hmm. Fun little roll and write. So come on down and check us out.
Two groups over here. Group before. Sexy mad scientist right here.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Wendy.
And we just got back from SHUX, and boy are our arms tired.
Yeah, we left Vancouver yesterday morning. We got home this morning about 1 a.m. So we're a little tired, but still on that post-con high. And we wanted to break down for you the things that we saw and did while we were there.
Yeah. It was a great show. It was a lot of fun. It was exhausting, but fun. And exhausting for different reasons than Gen Con. It's a lot smaller show, but it
significantly smaller show.
Yeah, you got a lot more close-up FaceTime with folks, which is neat.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the highlights of that show, was being able to have those very intimate encounters with game developers and designers, with other folks who are just really into board games. Like, everybody there just wanted to talk about what they played last, what they were going to play next, and it was very personable, which was nice. It was a nice change of pace.
Yeah. Much smaller expo space, but again, a lot easier to actually see everything and spend time with some stuff, which we did. We saw quite a few different upcoming games.
Yeah, we did. So as I mentioned, to me, the game of the show, the best part of the expo, was Bellows Intent and what I believe is their first game, called an Age Contrived. It had mechanics that I haven't seen. It had components that we've never seen. You build monuments with magnets, which were brilliantly drawn, but also very smart with the way everything laid together and the way the game flowed.
Yeah, the art is beautiful. The components are beautiful, and it's really hard to convey how cool this thing looks until you see it on a table in front of you. But the way the different monuments you're building all snap together with magnets is pretty neat, and definitely not something I've seen in another game.
Yeah, it's definitely the first time that I've seen it. I don't know if it's the first time it's been done. I don't know all the board games, but it was definitely the first time that we had seen it. And like the artwork, when we were talking to Chris, the designer, he was saying that he had contracted with a local artist who does a lot of like Lord of the Rings inspired art, and you could see that reflected in that art, and the fact it was just really vibrant. It was real kind of earthy, but at the same time you've got blues and purples in there. I mean, it just was absolutely brilliant. I thought I could have played that game all day.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to mess around with. Speaking of games I had a lot of fun messing around with, I got to sit down, like I mentioned at the top, and play a new game coming out from Octoraffe, called Bagged and Boarded. You play as a 9-year-old kid working to grow your comic book collection. So you're competing with the other people around the board to get your to have the best comic book collection worth the most money, essentially. It's a worker placement game, but instead of placing workers, you're placing little cubes that represent hours in the day, because again, you're a kid, and so you only have so many hours in a day that you can spend on different things. You can do chores to earn money. You have to spend some hours to go to the comic shop and actually buy the comics. And the whole thing is really about set collection. The designer who was there and I got to speak with said he based it around gin rummy, which is really interesting.
Now that you say that, you can see it.
Yeah.
I didn't see this game. I wasn't with you when you played it, but I did see the images that they put up during the Shut Up and Sit Down podcast taping. And so as soon as you said it's inspired by gin rummy, I'm like, yeah, much cooler. And a much better theme than gin rummy.
Yeah, because the cards you're collecting are all comic books. You know, they look like comic book covers with knockoff comic book characters. And I didn't realize we didn't really talk about it that much. They did mention that it was what we were playing was a prototype, but I didn't realize until they were talking about it in that Shut Up and Sit Down panel we went to that the art isn't final. Apparently, it's already pretty thematic and pretty good looking and ridiculous. I mean, with comic books with here, I think the one set that I managed to put together was from a comic book with a guy wearing a sweater vest, like a checkered sweater vest, and his name was Argyle. They had a knockoff
I can't
Garfield.
imagine you liking something with a pun in it.
A knockoff Garfield called Garfunkel, I think. So yeah, just all kinds of ridiculous, silly comics made to look like early, like Silver Age, not even Silver Age, like Golden Age, like really old comics.
Okay.
And so it was really neat and interesting. And one thing, getting to see behind the scenes, they were using poker chips to stand in for money. And one thing they were asking people as they sat down to play is they're like, well, we're thinking about having coins in the final game as your money pieces, but like nickels and dimes, because that's how much a comic book would cost in like the 50s or whatever, right? And so they were asking people's opinion of like, that seems really thematic to us. Do you think it would be cool to end the game with, a set of comic books that are worth like $2.50 or something, when all is said and done? Everyone at the table said yes, but
I would hope so.
Yeah.
That's those small little details that really take a really good theme and elevate it to the next level,
Yeah, and that was a big part of what I really enjoyed, and I talked to the designer about this for a little while, was the theming was so strong on everything. It's you wouldn't think it hearing this description. It's a pretty heavy duty like Euro game, like economic sim, right? It had a lot of rules, it had a lot of moving parts, but they were all easy to keep up with. Basically, after we played one full round of everyone taking a turn, everybody had it. Like, you didn't have to explain it again, because all of the rules were so thematically strong, they made so much sense within the theme, that you just grokked it immediately. You didn't have to think about it again. You're like, oh yeah, of course. Of course this is what I do with, when I'm going into the bargain bin at the comic shop and I'm just blindly drawing cards and seeing if there's anything in there that I want, It just made sense.
Sounds like something you would do in real life.
Something I something I have done. Yeah. Comics cost more than, 25 cents when I was a kid, but I definitely have stuck my head in a few bargain bins in my life.
Okay.
But that was bagged and boarded. I think it's supposed to be hitting Kickstarter March-ish, somewhere around there. Frankly, most of the stuff we saw is hitting Kickstarter, it sounds like, in like late winter, early spring, somewhere around there.
Yeah, one that I really enjoyed that is currently on Kickstarter, it just launched today, was Off the Page Games. Their game called Harrow County.
That's right, it did launch today. Today's Tuesday.
Today is Tuesday, October 4th, so it did launch. This is a game that we both had looked at online and were a little skeptical about. And then we saw it in real life, saw how all of these kind of funky components fit together, and if we haven't kickstarted it yet, we will be immediately after this, because I was hooked on that game. I was hooked. So I was hooked on it for a couple reasons. I am not a comic book fan. I don't have anything against comic books. It's just not something I've ever gotten into, and the last thing I need is another collectible hobby. Board games is enough for me for now, so I'm not familiar with the comic books that this is based on. But I love the fact that this is a game that's made for 1, 2, or 3 players. So we were talking to the designers, asking them, we play a lot of games at 2. And so finding those games that are best at 2 or play really well at 2 players sometimes can be a little bit challenging when you want a game that's a little heavier duty. A lot of times when you play as a 2-player, you just kind of feel like you're missing something on those kind of meatier games. The fact that this is made for 1 to 3 players, and it seems pretty well balanced at all 3 of those levels is enticing to me, because it's another, spooky theme, but fun game with these wild pieces in it, that we can enjoy without feeling like we're missing out on part of the story. Like the story was designed for us. And it also has not a dice tower built into the box, but a cube tower? What would you call that?
Essentially.
So when you have combat, you have little cubes, and each player has their own color cubes. And there's a piece on the box where you drop your cubes into the top. And what you drop in doesn't necessarily come out, because unlike a dice tower, it doesn't force everything down. It's forcing the components through these small little cube-sized boxes. So things will hang out at different levels, and as more cubes go in, it will knock those loose. So, and I was testing that. I really wanted to see where I could just like trick it to only give me one color, and I couldn't get it after they probably were ready to throw me out. But I sat there and dropped it probably 20 times trying to predict the outputs and the inputs. So that to me was really neat and fascinating, and it adds a really neat level of complexity to those battles.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, if I put in, 5 of my cubes, is that going to cause one of my cubes to come out and 3 of Jeremy's that were stuck in there, which would make that fight sequence go a little bit different than I had expected when I went in.
Yeah, it's probably, well, I thought the neatest mechanic that they showed off. There's lots of neat mechanics in this thing. Something I'm learning quickly here is that this is the same company behind Mind Management.
Right.
Another game that I thought I would have no interest in whatsoever until seeing the really clever mechanics that they managed to stuff into it. Same thing here. But that dice tower, for lack of a better word, I mean, it's what it looks like, really.
It is what it looks like.
And it is built right into the box, so you still, have use for the box even when the game's not in it. But the really cool thing about it is, and they mentioned this when they were describing it to us, is yes, it completely randomizes those combat encounters because you don't know how much is going to get through it, but you can predict a little bit. So, if somebody dumped a whole bunch of cubes in there last turn and only a couple came out, they've got a bunch sitting in there. And so if you have another combat encounter with them, the odds of them knocking a whole bunch of those loose go up. And so maybe you don't want to take that chance, right? It's just a really, really neat push of luck almost mechanic with physical components, which is wild.
It was very interesting. I kept coming back to it and then just like picking up some cubes and dropping them in there and walking on. But the outside of the cube tower, the other parts of the game also look really interesting. The artwork, again, like I feel like I'm always like, the artwork was nice. But the artwork was great. The characters are very theme appropriate. We didn't get a chance to play it. We only saw just like a quick walkthrough of how everything works. But I am interested to see how well that theme translates into the turn orders in that game.
Yeah. Absolutely. Agreed on all that. I mean, the artwork, of course. I mean, of course, it's based on a comic book, right? Like, of course it's going to have great artwork. So, we're definitely looking forward to that. And now that I have been reminded in my jet lag state that it's actually Tuesday today, maybe I'll go. I've literally been waiting all day because I thought it was Monday.
You have truly lost today.
I really, truly have. So maybe I'll go look that up on Kickstarter. You should too.
So just a couple more games that were in the expo hall that we enjoyed was Eruptious Games. Is that how you say it? Eruptious?
Eruptious, I believe.
Eruptious Games. They have a game called Krypto 9. It's a play on kryptonite, not like on cryptocurrency. Krypto 9, we actually bought this game and brought it home with us. It's real quick, super fast, just like a set making game, card game. And it was real quick. We played it for 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes. He timed it, and in that 5 minutes, we were taught how to play. We were dealt our hands, and I won, which didn't hurt.
Yeah,
it's an interesting game. Like, we will definitely get that one on the table here soon. It's for sale in certain parts of Canada right now, and he is working on distribution to get it into the U.S. right now. And then the last game that I wanted to point out was Cherry Picked Games, Hair of the Dog. It's a game that they have coming out, I believe, later this month. If not later this month, then in November. drinking beer, petting dogs. I don't know if there was ever a more brand appropriate for me game ever designed. I don't know what else you need to know about it. There's dogs, there's beer. Brilliant. And one of the dogs looked like our dogs. We were on vacation and really missing them, and so like it was nice to just, you know, sit down and do something that we do a lot, which is drink beer and pet dogs.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's a wild game. It seems really interesting and fun, but you're essentially I think you're running a pub. A pub with dogs in it, and the whole point of the game is to go around and pet the dogs, but to do anything you have to sip your beer.
That's right.
You have to sip your beer to move to the dog, you have to sip your beer to pet the dog.
That's right.
And if you ever run out of beer, you get kicked out of the pub. So
as one does.
Yeah.
And the more attention you give the dogs, the needier they become. So also, as they do. So outside of the expo hall, do you want to talk about any of the panels that you sat in on? Jeremy sat in on a lot more panels than I did. Usually when he was going to go see one, I took advantage of going up to our room to take a quick nap. Because it was truly exhausting while we were there. But do you want to talk about any of the panels that you saw?
Not in a ton of detail. They were all good. It was neat to see the shut up and sit down folks up close, like right there in front of you.
Right there in front of you.
They had several panels that they put on that were, of course, entertaining and funny. Quentin Smith at one point was adjudicating board gaming disagreements. Apparently the two things that will tear the board gaming community apart are should you or should you not sleeve your cards?
You should.
And which orientation do you stack your games in?
Horizontal.
That is roughly how the rulings came down as well. I did sit in on an interesting panel hosted by Rose Gauntlet. They are putting out a new game called Wild Gardens, where you are foraging for wild picked food, basically. And so they did it. They actually did a scavenger hunt that I didn't. Now that I know, I'm pretty sure I saw some of their. They put little plushies, like fruit plushies around of different fruits all over the convention center. And so if you found one of those and brought it, they brought you up to basically play a contest where they would show some sort of plant, and you would have to decide if it was poisonous or not. And people who won got copies of some of their games and stuff like that.
That's cool.
So it was.
I would have been really bad at that. We have a friend that would have been really killer at that game.
Yeah. I kept thinking we need to get that when it comes out and have her over to play it.
Yes. Although we need to make sure to account for the time, because if that's a 30-minute playtime, it's going to take probably 2 hours, because we're going to have to hear the life story of every single plant that's in there.
Probably.
There will probably be tears shed at some point of just all of that brilliant plant stuff.
Yeah. And another thing I thought was really cool there, they talked a little bit about their company's mission to be inclusive, and you can see it in the artwork for that game.
You can.
It's
right on the cover.
Yeah, it's a lot of people you don't normally see represented that much in board games.
So important.
So, it was. Yeah, that was about it. It was really neat, really fun. Yeah.
So we also spent a lot of time, probably most of our time, in the Indie Alley. So we had a booth while we were there, but we also spent time walking around looking at the other games that were in there. There were different games on Friday and Saturday, and then everybody kind of came back together on Sunday. So it was really rad getting to see all of these up-and-coming games, to participate in playtesting with folks. So did any game in particular stick out to you?
In Indie Avenue,
Yeah.
I mean, Weirdwood, Manor.
Yeah.
I only got a very brief sort of overview from the designer on that because I obviously couldn't sit there and play it. We had our own booth to run, but the board that they have put together,
It's the most brilliant board I've ever seen. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
it's okay.
I saw it and then went over and was like, Jeremy, go over there and see them right now. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit you again. Go over there and see that right now. That game was bad.
Yeah, the art is, again, great. Really, really well done. But then they've also got this board that they've put together that's a modular board. So the different parts can fit together in different ways. They can flip over. But it also rotates. It's like concentric circles, determining the different places your players can move, the different things they can do. It's a really neat looking game.
Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to play it because we were always working at the same time as the Greyridge games guys were. But that is a game I will be on the lookout for, that Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Because I kept looking over at it. We were sitting next to each other, and so I was spending half of our day like looking over to see how the play was going, to see if I could get any insight into how the game worked.
What about you?
So there were several in there that I really liked. I played a game called I'm Right, You're Wrong. From a company with the same name. Derek, the creator, sat there and played with me. And it's interesting because you are simulating an argument while you're playing this game. And so it's a card game where you've got nice things to say and mean things to say on a card. So if you say a nice thing, it gets you points, but it also hurts you. But the point is to end the argument well. And he said it was inspired by an argument that he had at work. So the game, it's fascinating as you're sitting there and you're playing it. You realize that it works a lot like a normal like disagreement that you would have with someone, where you start out and you're just like throwing down those red cards like the means, and then you start like trying to pull those greens out. Like, okay, I'm sorry. This is really dumb. Can't we be friends? Like, you start just like throwing down all those green cards to end that argument. So it was interesting. And then hearing him talk about how he uses these, like, he just meditates on these conversations and then creates cards around them so that you can make sure that when you're in those scenarios in real life that you immediately reach for your green cards instead of your red cards. Like, it's a fascinating concept, and I really enjoyed that playthrough that he and I had together.
Yeah.
And we didn't play it. It still is in like super duper demo stage. But First Fish Games they had their published game, Ducks in Tow there. But they had, I don't even remember what it was called, but the Whale Ship.
Mistlands or something like that?
Whale Ship? I don't know.
It does have sky whales.
Yes, and so we were talking to the designer who was just like walking us through like where they're at in their design process and how the mechanics work today, and was talking about going through different animals that could be used potentially as a beast of burden, and someone just kind of jokingly suggested a whale, and he was like, how would that work? And that's where you are flying through the air on a gigantic whale, which alone is really rad. But the game, I'm interested to see how that one works out.
Yeah, it's kind of a Euro style as well. You're setting up trade routes, building outposts, that sort of thing. The difference, of course, is you're not selling ships and setting up trade routes. You are flying these skywells, which they had really well done little miniatures that they had put together of these things, and building these little trade route towers across the map he had set up. It was, really, really, again, really strong art, and really strong components on that one, I would say.
Yeah, the components were...
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of good components, on Saturday, Banana Games was there with their game Steam Up. Their Kickstarter, I think, is wrapping up now. It was a game that we had seen from afar at Gen Con. We couldn't get close to it at Gen Con. So I was glad to put my hands on it and get to feel those components. We kickstarted it almost immediately with the upgraded version so that you get the upgraded components. And that game just is visually stunning. I mean, it's something that you don't really see a lot. When we were at Gen Con and we went to the Dice Tower podcast, they talked about it. They were just saying, because they were talking about things that they had seen over and over and over again, and then they were like, but then we see something like this and we've never seen anything like it, or whatever it was that they said, in particular calling out that game just for the innovative theme that they have.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, it has dim sum trays, or
like little steamer baskets.
Steamer baskets, that's what they are. That you stack on top of each other, and at least in the deluxe edition, they're actually little wooden dim sum baskets.
Yes, with little resin foodstuffs that you put in there.
Yeah, it's really
soft resin.
Yeah, it's really, really great looking. In addition to being a theme and a culture that you don't see a lot in board games, the components themselves are very unique. And really amazing looking, and it's a really neat look. You play as one of the animals in the Chinese zodiac. You basically rotate this again. This is becoming, the Lazy Susan boards are really becoming more and more common.
I have never met a Lazy Susan I did not like.
But you can rotate it around so that, because it determines what quadrant you can take food from, right? And so it's basically a set collection game, right? You're trying to build up a set of cards so that you can take the requisite food, and you're just a little rabbit or a monkey or an ox or whatever, trying to eat as much dim sum as possible.
I mean, that is kind of like me. I'm a little raccoon. I don't think there's a raccoon in the Chinese zodiac, though. Okay, but do you want to know what my favorite game that was in Indie Alley was?
What was that?
Heisenburger.
Yes. Yes.
So we had our game in Indie Alley at SHUX just to do some playtesting, to meet some folks, to show it off, to talk about it. We had a few hundred playtests go on over the weekend.
Yeah.
And got some good feedback on the game. Mostly that folks really seemed to have enjoyed it while we were playing.
Yeah. The feedback was great. Everybody who came over and played it was so nice and complimentary. We got some really strong feedback as well that I intend to go implement on this next round on the cards. So it was really valuable to have all those people playtest, and it was really good to have it reinforced that, hey, this thing is actually fun and enjoyable, you know.
And quick to pick up, easy to teach, easy to pick up, it seems. We played it with kids. We played with a lot of kids, actually. A lot more than I expected to.
Yeah.
And we played it with adults alike. And so there was one guy who We asked him at the end, sign up for our newsletter. Hey, by the way, sign up for our newsletter. And he just was like, no, I'll keep an eye out for the Kickstarter. And then he came back a few minutes later and said, can I sign up for your newsletter? And we were like, of course you can. He's like, I can't get your game off my head. It's like, okay. So he signed up, and then he came back later again and was like, this game is really fun. And he actually provided us with, they actually provided us with a lot of ideas for expansions or future games in the Heisenburger family, which was pretty awesome.
And speaking of the steamed up, Selena.
Well, there was Serena and Selena.
Okay.
And they were our hype gals.
Yeah. The daughters of the folks who made Steam Up came over and loved Heisenburger so much they kept coming over.
Selena, the younger of the two, was going around the convention and telling people to come play our game, or bringing people to come play our game, and then she would beat them. She's 9. She beat me probably 50 times. It was a game that she just really took to, but she was going around and telling everybody to come play the game.
Not just telling them to come play it, teaching them.
Yes, by the end of the weekend, people would come up and I would just say, okay, Selena, did you want to teach them how to do it? And she would say yes, and then she would just start laying out cards and walking people through the rules, and then would say, okay, we're going to play. I'm purple, you can be whatever color you want to be. Wendy, you're green. Okay, I'm green. And we would play.
Yeah, I apparently need to revise that ages 10 plus on our box.
Yeah, we had as young as 7, and they're playing with us, so maybe we'll do some more testing with the younger folks to see where they go.
Yeah.
We had lots of stickers in our booth. We had hot sauce bottles, or singularity sauce bottles, if you will. Of some hot sauce that we picked up and had imported to Canada, that we brought home a few bottles in our suitcase, with all of our game information on it. So people really seem to like the hot sauce too.
Yeah, these got spread all over SHUX. If you wound up with one of these, apologies. They just seem to sprout everywhere.
I don't apologize. The hot sauce is good.
Try it. It's actually quite good hot sauce. And I think we will probably forever have the reputation now of the hot sauce game, even though it's a hamburger game.
Yes. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It's the singularity sauce, which is one of the cards in Heisenburger. But I'll say it made me really excited to show this to more folks. We need to get some playtesting going. If you see this and you're interested in playtesting, you can sign up for our newsletter to get information when that drops. You can send me an email at wendy@elevation.games, and I would love to hear from you, and we can set up some playtesting. So we're ready to get a lot more serious about that now.
Yeah, and we do have digital playtesting. I've got the game loaded into Tabletop Simulator, so that's an option as well if you're, local to us here.
Sure.
So,
SHUX. I'm so glad we went.
Yeah.
It was nice to meet a lot of folks that we had been talking to online. It was nice to meet other folks in the board gaming community. I really enjoy board gaming as a hobby, but I truly love the community that's been built around board gaming. I really don't think that there's anything better. That community is awesome. Everybody is friendly and outgoing, and they just want to tell you their favorite game and why, and what's your favorite game and why, and so it's so great. And so anytime we get to spend a long period of time immersed with those folks, it's going to be just a real treat.
Yeah, and this group for sure was particularly welcoming and inclusive. It was really nice to see.
It is. It gives you hope.
Yeah. So thanks, Shut Up and Sit Down, for giving us the opportunity to come be on Indie Avenue.
Yeah.
We got a lot out of it, for sure.
It was a really nice convention, too. Like,
yeah.
I feel Shut Up and Sit Down is a podcast and YouTube channel that we both really enjoy. When we first started getting into the hobby, it was a place we spent a lot of time. I am unsurprised that that gang of folks puts on a pretty awesome expo. When you sign in and get your badge, they give you a bag full of games. Just like, hey, thanks for being here. Here's a bag full of games. Just the whole thing, just the spirit and the vibe around the whole place was just really open, welcoming, happy. You know, it was the first one since COVID. And so everybody was just so happy to be back together. It was something that was a really nice way to spend a long weekend. And we really appreciate the Shut Up and Sit Down folks for doing such an excellent job. I mean, Matt was sick and he still came out and did a show there at the end. So it truly just, reinforces that those folks are awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Stay tuned. Like Wendy said, we will be getting this out some more. For people to see, get some more playtesting done as we gear up and hurtle towards Kickstarter next year, early next year, hopefully.
And while we were at SHUX, we picked up a whole lot of new games. Some of them we're very excited to get on the table and show you. So make sure that you are subscribed so that you never miss any of the action. Make sure that you've gone to our website, signed up for our newsletter. You get a free game just for signing up for it. And that way you can make sure that you don't ever miss anything.
Yeah, and we'll be doing some more giveaways, possibly some stuff that we may have brought back. Some stuff we brought back from Gen Con as well. We've got lots of stuff.
We have a whole giveaway shelf over here.
But you gotta be on that email list.
You do have to be.
Go sign up. If you want some free swag.
That's right. Hey, we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.